7 signs that someone may be emotionally manipulative. Let's get into it. This is one take. You ever walked into a conversation very confident and then you left kind of confused and kind of feeling a little guilty because where did this even come from? And you weren't even trying to argue with the person, but it turned into an argument and now it's your fault? Stay here. All right, so while everyone, of course, can communicate poorly at times, you have to pay attention to like those repeated patterns of manipulation because they start to affect your confidence, your decision making, and how you start to view yourself. So today I'll be sharing 7 common behaviors that may be signs of emotional manipulation. One, because manipulation, anyway, I don't care. Let's just get into it, okay? So number 1 is gaslighting. Gaslighting is when someone is repeatedly causing you to question your own memory, your own perceptions, your own experience, even when you were in the situation. So you start hearing things like, that never happened, you're too sensitive, you're imagining things, you're remembering it wrong, all those things. And then over time, you start to believe that person even though you were standing in the room. How does that happen? Anyway, everyone, of course, can remember things differently. It's your own perception, but gaslighting goes far beyond the disagreements. It's a habit, it's a form of patterns. Number 2 is guilt trip. With guilt tripping, healthy relationships involve that honest communication. You cannot be in a relationship with a liar. You cannot be in a relationship with a liar. You got to remember that. You cannot be in a relationship with a liar. A liar. Anyway, instead of respecting your boundaries, that other person makes you feel very responsible for their own emotions. I don't care too much about emotions. Anyway, manipulation often involves using any form of guilt to influence your decision. So, for example, if that man or woman says, "If you love me, you would," or "I guess I don't matter." So, when you try to say something about your boundaries. So, instead of respecting your boundaries, the other person makes you feel very responsible for their emotions, even though they lied about their cousin taking the groceries out. So, manipulation often makes saying no feel completely impossible. Let it go. Number 3, I'm pretty sure is also very familiar, and it is the silent treatment. So sometimes, of course, we need space. I need my space too after an argument, and that's healthy, depending on what it is, right? But the silent treatment is completely different. So instead of saying, like, I need some time to cool off, that person suddenly kind of ghosts you, and it starts to feel like it's more so like a punishment versus like, whatever. But anyway, the goal for them is maybe just to create some anxiety, so you'll start to apologize because now you're like, let's just get it over with, I apologize, when it wasn't your fault. So it starts to feel like a punishment, and punishment through silence is something completely different. So pay attention to that. All right, number 4 is love bombing. We love a good love bomber. At the beginning of the relationship, everything feels incredibly intense and just really, really nice, constant compliments and expensive gifts and things like that, right? Cool. Talking about, forever and ever, wanting to spend every day of the time with that person. Intense emotions and affection is not always unhealthy, but if it's followed by any form of like withdrawal or like control or whatever like that, you might want to pay attention to whether that person's actions stay consistent over time after all those things. And we're on 5. So that is blame shifting. So does every disagreement somehow end up being your fault, even though it was that person's fault? So you bring up something that hurt you, and all of a sudden you're apologizing because he or she did something? Yeah, so instead of that person basically taking responsibility or taking accountability, they completely try to change the subject, they minimize your concerns, or they try to redirect the attention to something that you did 5 years ago, right? Okay. No one gets everything right at the same time, but at the same time, accountability has to be present for both people if you guys are trying to accomplish a common goal of not trying to argue, but just let's be together, let's just get together. Anyway. All right, so number 6 is moving the goalpost. So have you ever felt like you do everything, every time you do something, it's just not enough, basically. So they find one issue, you fix it, and then they move the goalpost as far as like, there's another new standard in town, basically. So over time, you feel like you're constantly just trying to earn this approval from this person that never actually comes. So that's moving the goalpost, basically. Healthy expectations are generally very clear and consistent. So pay attention to that. If it's not consistent, it's not clear, something's wrong. Finally, the last one, isolation. So one of the most concerning patterns is that person encouraging you to pull away from anybody that they identify, that they know that you identify as very supportive for you. So it may sound like things like, your family doesn't care about you, your friends are a bad influence, you don't need anyone except me. That sounds a little crazy, so you might want to back up. Healthy relationships usually encourage like those connections, the trusted friends, families, all that other stuff. I encourage people to enjoy themselves. Isolation is very hard to recognize in unhealthy dynamics because the fewer people that you now have around you, the less other opinions that you have. And I'm not saying have everybody's opinion in your relationship, but at least have somebody that is understanding of the relationship in some shape or form. So if they're pulling away from that person because they're probably very rational, you might want to reconsider your relationship.